There are Steam events I look forward to, and among them, my greatest appreciation is for the Steam Next Fest, a week-long event where tons of demos for upcoming games are released out into the wild to help the developers get those games in front of prospective players' peepers. It's a wild combination of almost finished titles to those barely in alpha and some just getting ready for an early access release. It's also a great celebration, in my opinion, of the boundless creativity present in the gaming industry. Steam Next Fest often has titles that are just weird and wild in the best ways. And all the worst too, of course. But we're not here to talk about the games that failed to leave a mark with me, for either technical, practical, or even aesthetic reasons. Nah, we're here to talk about the games that hooked me in, that pulled me into a close embrace and asked something of me, something simple but transcendental. Will you wishlist me? For many of the titles on this list, the answer was yes. For others, it was, sorry, I'm just not ready for that kind of commitment, but I will follow your news, and maybe in the future we can give this another go, maybe another shot. Sometimes the fireworks are there from the beginning. Sometimes it takes a little bit more time. But let's get right into it. And I'll start with a game I covered on Monday's video, Cathy Rain 2, Soothsayer. I played the original Cathy Rain at least 3 times. A great point-and-click adventure game with a compelling storyline that got progressively weirder and had our main character deal with elements of her youth and past. It was outstanding, one of my favorite adventures. You can imagine then I almost jumped out of my seat when I saw this game. It's several years after, and Cathy is now a private detective, and her latest investigation, as the title would suggest, deals with the Soothsayer, a serial killer. His latest victim, a famous writer. So the demo is the early stages of the investigation, specifically getting into the crime scene, the author's home, under the careful watch of a die-hard fanboy overseeing the memorial for the fallen storyteller. It's great stuff, and has an interesting mechanic of using the library's search system to look for different clues in a way that reminds me of something like Cyber Manhunt or The Root Trees Are Dead. So I'm hooked, and you can bet it's wishlisted. Now, can we all agree once and for all that cel-shaded is the best visual style? Or at least anything that is not photorealistic? Games look better, things pop more, you can do some wild visual stuff, and the best of all, the games hold up for years. There's a reason stuff like Wind Waker from the GameCube of all things still looks good. Why am I saying all this? Because the first Berserker, Kazan, has such a style and it looks good. The bursts of color here and there offering a great contrast to the usual dark and gloomy medieval Souls-like aesthetics. And while I do have a great degree of Souls fatigue, unless you wrap it in a Metroidvania turtleneck cardigan, I do like what I played of First Berserker. It's got a lot of fun systems. Your weapons are of specific types and each has their own skill tree, in addition to the usual gear and stats. And the parry and dodge are really satisfying, with the dodge reminding me a bit of Ys 8 and 9, maybe even Bayonetta, where dodging at the last second will cause a bit of bullet time you can take advantage of. Would I prefer this to be a balls-to-the-wall, go-nuts, over-the-top action game instead of the more meticulous Souls-like? Sure, but this is the kind of Souls-like I can get behind, especially because the game actively helps you to get better by giving you a bit of currency every time you die to the boss, or a boss. In this case, the demo was the boss, which means even if you're struggling, you can eventually get a few more upgrades in to help bridge the gap. So yeah, wishlisting it for sure. As my comment on the previous entry might suggest, I do like my Metroidvanias, I really do. I can't get enough of them. Which is why I pretty much breathed and lived Enter Magnolia a few weeks ago. But if there's one thing I've noticed, is that of the Metroidvania, a whole lot of titles tend to lean more towards the Vania than the Metroid, with melee combat, especially as Souls-like elements have been brought in. So imagine my surprise when Maudra is straight up Metroid-like, with the character running around with an arm cannon and the ability to shoot in all directions, while exploring a sprawling high-tech world full of dangers. It doesn't get more Metroid-coded when the flora and fauna of the world hate your guts. The story has our character, part of a special forces team, coming to a planet to pick up the princess of their world, and every member of the group more or less dying right after. Even our main character suffering a horrific injury at the hands of the very person they came looking for. But a friendly stranger, someone stationed on this world to study some strange biotech they found, sees no other choice but to bind you to that tech so you are, well, reborn. And if you're thinking this sounds a lot like Metro Fusion, then yes. But with those recent Hollow Knight elements, where your energy fuels both special moves and your health recovery. My only disappointment with the demo was that I couldn't keep playing it. It was so good. It even had a Metroid Prime style scanner. I need to play this soon. I need to play it very soon or I'm gonna go crazy. So for now, wishlisted. While I've never played through any entry of the Danganronpa series, I did watch the anime adaptation and do quite like the franchise, which made it so the new game by the same developers, the 100-line Last Defense Academy, was instantly on my radar from the moment I saw the announcement trailer. It's a complete departure, being a tactical game instead of a murder mystery intrigue visual novel. The characters are just young people chosen to fight against some kind of inhuman army, and upon first fighting against them, they're taken to the eponymous Last Defense Academy to serve out 100 days in the defense of humanity, at which point they, presumably, would get sent back home. But knowing the developers and the kind of twists they dish out, I expect the whole thing to be quite the lie. The gameplay is pretty fun, and it's a cool kind of demo we've seen lately, where it's not just a random segment of the game, but the actual opening chapters, with your progress transferable to the main game once it's released. With that said, however, I do find the tactics elements a bit on the shallow side, such as direct encounters, everyone on the same playing field, with no obstacles or platforms or even environmental effects. I can only hope this is just because it's the prologue first chapter, and as the story progresses, it adds complexity to the mix. I mean, the demo only has about 4 playable units, with the rest of the cast refusing to fight for one reason or another. Some are pacifists, and some don't trust the obviously shady, semi-transparent mascot character. I'm sure that'll change later on. Though, if I'm gonna be honest, I did not play the full demo. It's a long section of the game, and I had a lot of demos to go through. So I played for about 3 or 4 hours, and I intend to go back to continue, and maybe I'll find those things I didn't see during the first few hours. So for now, 100 line is followed. I need to see more to get a better feel for the title. It's rare for me to see text-based adventures, where the vast majority of the time is spent just reading blocks of text. Actually, who am I kidding? I'm a Trail series fan, the most verbose JRPG series ever. I'm used and I love giant walls of text at this point. Your House is a narrative adventure that is heavy on the text, but what makes it work for me is that the presentation is like a graphic novel, the text interspersed with images, some of them conveying the action on the page, and others having elements you can interact with to obtain additional information and solve puzzles, even taking items from one panel into another. There is a mystery afoot, and the character we play as, Debbie, is hot on the trail, with only an address and a key as her clues. The demo ending with some mystery about her mother, and the game's store page promises an interconnected mystery with multiple point-of-view characters. I am a sucker for deductive puzzling, and this game has that in spades. And the narrative has got me intrigued. All you need to get me to wishlist Your House. 3D escape room detective story tells you everything you need to know right there on the title. You're going to be playing through escape room-like scenarios with a detective case focus. If you're a fan of The Room or The House of Da Vinci and the upcoming House of Tesla, like I am, then this game will be right up your alley. I know, it's my alley, so it's instantly wishlisted. Emi Nima is a weird one. You play as a girl waking up strapped to a chair, with her mother acting very strangely towards her, asking her questions and trying to figure something out from the responses, becoming suspicious or agitated if the wrong answer is given. The girl, Niba presumably, has both her voice in her mind and another one that warns her of this lady, her mother. The gameplay consists of taking words regarding concepts or ideas and then mixing and matching them together to generate more terms, such as stranger and Nima creating mom, and then mom and memory spawning dad and sad, and so on. While there is a limit on how many terms you can create during a given scene, the number is fairly large, and through the demo I found that the goal is kinda to build your vocabulary to be able to respond to mother's questions. The whole concept and the presentation are unnerving as hell. There is a hint of tension in every scene, and given the way the demo ends, with things going very poorly to say the least, I'm very intrigued about what the full experience of Am I Nima will entail. Wishlisted, of course, if it's not been abundantly clear in the past. I love me a good point-and-click adventure game, and there were quite a few in the Steam Next Fest, such as Arkham Mysteries Chapter 1, where you play an investigator helping his client get into a house, our detective having some kind of special sight that reveals additional clues and even interaction points, the coolest among them being a barking spectral dog holding a key. Once you open the gates blocking the way to Ghost Pooch, you can grab the key and continue on your journey. It's puzzle heavy and gave me a good escape room style vibe, and that's a wish list for me instantly. Though the only reservation I still have is that it says Chapter 1 on the title, making me wonder if this game, which promises multiple endings apparently, will be just the prologue of a larger story. Honestly, I don't mind that, as long as the prologue is meaty enough to satisfy my puzzle cravings. I love The Legend of the Five Rings. I was an avid player of the tabletop RPG. I remember spending nights playing from dusk till dawn with my friends as our honorable samurai dealt with both natural and preternatural threats while still juggling a good reputation and courtly intrigue. I didn't realize how much I missed stepping into Rokugan until I played Shadow Veil, Legend of the Five Rings, a roguelike strategy game that combines auto-battlers with Slay the Spire style progression, with base upgrades that lead to more items, skills, and even new units and characters. I would have preferred a turn-based strategy where I control the actions of the units, but I have to say the auto-battler nature of Shadow Veil grew on me during the demo. I'm very interested in what kind of story they're telling. It seems focused on the Crab Clan. For a long time, the last line of defense between the Emerald Empire and the monstrous forces of the Shadowlands, and I'm all for it. Shadowlands campaigns were my absolute favorite to play in The Legend of the Five Rings. Not only wishlisted, but given that it's released, it's sitting on my cart, waiting for me to get paid so I can get it. Yasha, Legends of the Demon Blade is a Hades-like, set in the Edo period and dealing with yokai and other fantastical Japanese folklore creatures and elements. It's pretty straightforward, but what sets it apart for me is the fact you have multiple characters, each with a unique combat style. One of them is about sweeping circular slashes to take on mobs of enemies, the other is a faster fighter with more limited range and area abilities, and the other, the Big Tiger Man, who was my chosen character of course, has both melee and ranged abilities. You can switch between them on the fly. Not only that, but there's a parry system in place, and it's very satisfying to pull off, with a super parry even for big attacks that opens you to perform an ultimate-like ability. All in all, it's pretty fun, but at first glance with the demo, it feels a bit bare bones. I didn't find much complexity in it, so I think I need to see more, maybe some reviews when it releases before I can commit to this epic demon-busting adventure. So for now, it's a follow. As I've said it, I love me a Metroidvania, so of course, I took a look at Rusty Rabbit. It's not the first bunny-centric Metroidvania I've played either. Anyone remember Fist? Oh, that game was awesome. In the demo, I found myself rummaging through piles of trash in a factory setting, looting everything around me and more or less just exploring and platforming away across this strange industrial landscape. Along the way, the character meets a group of newcomer bunnies here on the hunt for rare treasure, much like our surly and dejected bunny protagonist, Stamp does pretty much every day. Normally, Metroidvanias are a shoo-in for wishlisting, but I have to say that I found the controls and overall exploration and platforming of Rusty Rabbit kinda clunky, and in some cases, like the game's version of the double jump, very hard to control. Not only that, but there's a distinct lack of mouse and keyboard support, which I'm not a fan of. What does that mean? It means this one's staying underfollowed for now. If I learn some of my concerns are alleviated, be it through a preview or another demo, that might change. But given that it's releasing next month, I think this is the final product, in which case I'll be looking through those reviews. There are games out there that evoke some childlike joy from me. Games that remind me of past gems, but are not dependent on the nostalgia factor to keep me hooked, and Rough on the Riverside is a perfect example of that. The style of the gameplay is reminiscent of those old N64 platforming adventures like Donkey Kong and Mario 64, and of course Banjo-Kazooie, where you travel into different worlds, fulfilling missions and getting some kind of reward. Rough on the Riverside using the classic Star. But where Mario has different caps, the Kongs have multiple family members, and B and K have each other, Rough has the ability to absorb the properties of objects and imbue others with them, like absorbing a vine and using that to turn a waterfall into a bunch of plants you can climb, or rocks into wooden boxes, or an ocean turning into an icy landscape, and much more. All of it happening in a bright, colorful world with a distinct paper-like aesthetic. Rough and the other characters are all two-dimensional paper cutouts, and it's just truly delightful. I had a lot of fun with this demo and look forward to exploring the Riverside in its entirety. Wishlisted. When I played the original Breathedge, I left it behind. The game found a way of annoying me. Then again, this genre, the Subnautica genre of crafty exploration survival, has never been my cup of tea. The whole thing tends to stress me out instead of being a relaxing, enjoyable experience. But with my memories of the first Breathedge firmly in place, I approached the demo for the sequel with some trepidation, and I found myself swept in a delightful continuation with a bonkers start, and so many quality of life improvements that, despite my usual feelings about the genre, made me want to play the game when it comes out. Hell, it made such an impact on me that I went back and finished the original Breathedge, pushing past the things that annoyed me and finding a flawed but ultimately decent experience, one that the developers have clearly learned from, given what I saw in the demo. Not only that, but I've gone back to play Subnautica of all things, something I thought would never happen, so thanks Breathedge 2, I suppose? Wishlisted. I did say there were a lot of Metroidvanias, and Beyond the Ice Palace 2 is one of them. I never played the original, but then again, that would be an Amiga platformer from 1988. I never had an Amiga, and the games my sister had on her Atari were limited as hell. But I did play the hell out of this demo. The story is that the king of the land, the great hero, who the gods bless with power and their favor over and over and over and over, was betrayed and killed by those closest to him, jealous of the blessings continually bestowed upon him, and selling their souls to a demonic lord who promised them the power that had been long denied to them. Odd as demons and traitors ravage the land, those that remain say, nah, we're not taking this lying down. So with ancient rituals to bring back the king, but he's not entirely himself, more of an undead than anything else, but full of righteous fury and ready to take back his kingdom. Interestingly, while the game does feature an interconnected map, as all Metroidvanias do, and the store page show different abilities the character will acquire, all in line with the genre as well, the demo itself plays and looks a lot more like a classic Vania, with really no abilities or powers to be found and enhance the character, like a double jump or something like it, but just normal platforming and combat, focusing on the core gameplay loop rather than the genre-specific elements. At least that's my guess. This was one of those demos that left me wanting more, and so of course, it's wishlisted. If there is a genre I didn't think I would enjoy as much as I did, it's this new wave of bartender or tavern keeper or barista games, such as Tavern Talk, where you play as the innkeeper of a typical D&D-like world, giving adventurers ability-enhancing potions and listening to their issues. So I was already on board with Best Served Cold, even before I realized It's this genre, but also adding a detective story and deductive gameplay to it all, where you need to not only serve drinks, but butter up or rile up the clientele to get them to spill the beans on the ongoing mystery afoot in the city, all while keeping the authorities happy so they don't close up your shop. After all, you run a speakeasy, and this is smack dab in the middle of Prohibition. The demo was pretty fun and gives the first little glimpses of what we can expect from Best Served Cold in the full experience. And you know I'm a sucker for a good detective story, so I wishlisted this at once. If we have Metroidvania and Souls-likes as genres, then I can only describe Nea as a Myst-like. A first-person puzzle adventure with complex puzzles, vast landscapes to explore, and FMV cutscenes. Nea is so Myst-coded that much like that classic title, you're not from around there, falling through a crack in reality to find yourself in a new world where you're just a stranger. I mean, it doesn't get more Myst than that. The acting is a bit dodgy, but I found the visual presentation not only evocative of old-school first-person adventures, but also engrossing. I wanted to explore the worlds presented to me and take gateways to new locales and solve a bunch of puzzles. Nea was a pleasant surprise, one of the highlights of the next fest for me, for certain. So yes, wishlisted. Midnight Special is an interesting one, a horror point-and-click adventure where you play a young woman acting as babysitter to a pair of siblings, their parents quite wealthy. In fact, the game takes place in the manor, which just from the get-go is creepy as hell. At first you're just fulfilling your job, but after putting the kids to bed, she feels very tired and even mentioned that if she doesn't sleep soon, she might start to hallucinate, which to me just sounds like the game telling me from the start that there's gonna be some freakishness going on. And lo and behold, I was right, for upon taking a nap, we see her wake in a strange forest with elements that seem drawn straight from the mind of Edgar Allan Poe. And when she finally manages to actually escape and wake up, she hears strange noises and receives a call from a stranger wondering how the kid's bones will taste like. I found Midnight Special to be just the right kind of spooky and chilling, and I can't wait to see more. And while that sounds like I'm going to wishlist it, I'm not. I'm merely following for now, as this is a title coming to early access in the future, so I remain a bit cautious, at least until I'm certain that it will deliver on the promise the demo made. Post-Trauma is a different one, because it's been sitting on my wish list for a long time, even before I saw any gameplay. I put it there because the images and the videos on the store page intrigued me. The presentation seemed interesting, and it had a definite Silent Hill vibe to it. Still, I had some doubts. After all, a lot of games look good on paper, but then the gameplay may let you down. That didn't happen with Post-Trauma's demo. I got exactly what I expected. A classic-style survival horror with strong Silent Hill vibes, not just in the environmental design or the creepiness and the oppressive nature, but also the enemy design, and the fact the character is a bit clunky when it comes to his attacks. He doesn't seem like an experienced fighter, just a dude swinging a crowbar. I'm excited for Post-Trauma. I'm looking forward to see if the full game can live up to the frankly amazing demo, which ends with your character being run over by a train of all things. If that's not just for the demo, then I'm really curious as to how our protagonist can survive that. I've mentioned Metroidvania, Souls-likes, and even Myst-likes in this demo reel, but Out of Sight is a new one even for me. This is a Little Nightmares-like, where you play a little girl in a place where most things are far larger than she is. At first I thought it was because it was a small child, but as I continued progressing through the demo, I realized the girl's captors are freakishly large, which further emphasized the Little Nightmares inspiration in my head. But what really intrigued me about Out of Sight, and which is for certain its main selling point, is that the girl is blind and sees through her teddy bear. So when she's holding him, Out of Sight is a first-person game, but she can't perform actions while holding the bear, so she has to put him down, at which point it becomes a third-person game. And I can already see the kind of challenge and unique scenarios that will be put before us, considering she must always go back and pick up the bear. It's not just solve the puzzle and move on, it's solve it, hide from the pursuers, grab Teddy, and then book it. I'm gonna go over the next two games together as they're both the same genre, point-and-click adventure games, and both feature very short demos with just a handful of puzzles. Elroy and the Alien stars the eponymous Elroy, son of a long-lost archaeologist and who, along with his programmer friend, is trying to build a rocket that goes up, comes down, and lands in the same spot. Visiting him is a reporter for an article regarding the invention. They have a nice back and forth, and ultimately the launch fails due to some form of interference, but it leads to the discovery of an Obi-Wan, you're my only hope kind of message from his missing father, and so he and the reporter head out to see where the adventure takes them. Brassheart, on the other hand, has our main character travel to her father's estate as he's asked her to come urgently. She arrives and the entirety of the demo is to find a way into his office, as he's apparently absorbed in his research and doesn't hear the knocking. In this alternate history world, he and his colleagues created an AI and gave her the task of bettering the world, so you can predict where it went. There's now an army conquering the world with the AI as the overlord. I wishlisted Elroy and the Aliens. Both games had rather simplistic puzzles, but the chemistry between the characters in Elroy and the mystery presented before us more than made up for the lack of challenge. I can't say the same about Brassheart, where I didn't find anyone very memorable, and while the premise is pretty weak, there's a lot of potential there still, and it seems to be a world-trotting adventure in an alternate history world, so I'm still somewhat interested in it. So for now, this one is getting followed. Lastly, there's Deliver at All Costs, which was not what I expected. When I read the premise, I thought it was going to be something akin to Crazy Taxi, where it's just get there as fast as you can with little regard for consequences. What I got instead was a game that seems to draw inspiration from the original Grand Theft Auto, which had a top-down view and with a mission-based structure with lots of secondary things to engage with. The core of the gameplay and the story is our character acting as a courier for a company called We Deliver. The company has some curious clientele, and the tasks before us are out there, progressively more so, crossing the line between zany and just insane. A shady salesman wants to sell a bar some dodgy melons, and when caught, has us take him and the questionable produce to essentially get it irradiated and then put through a chemical bath to make them look fresh, and then deliver all of it as if it were a new batch of product. Someone asks for some pretty hardcore fireworks that the moment they touch the truck, start going off, causing untold destruction on the way. The game is hectic, it's frantic, and just so much damn fun. And with our character an engineer capable of modifying the truck with some weird upgrades, including a crane to pull stuff like, I don't know, a giant marlin, Deliver at All Costs promises an unforgettable adventure. Wishlisted, of course. And so endeth the Steam Next Fest for February 2025. I played so many demos, and these were the best for me. But a lot of these demos are still available, and you should go check them out for yourself, and even come back and tell me about some that I may have missed. After all, I don't need a fest to get me to try new games. I'm always up for a demo reel.